Here we go. So, I'm gonna give you guys some good points on this episode because I will say this is way better than last episode and the other one where I was just getting annoyed because things are starting to mesh together. We're starting to get some character development, and I made a point. I don't know whether it was last episode or the other following past episode, but I made a point where like every episode we're getting into a big problem and we need to fix this now. And that's mostly the episode where they kind of sprinkle in some character developments. And I will give them credit where credit is due. There is sprinkling that happened in those past episodes that are starting to finally start blooming. And I'm fine with that. But I think that still could have been written better because you got to remember everybody's on a short attention span, especially with all the, the TikToks and the Twitters and all that stuff. People don't have time to wait till episode 5 or episode 6 to be like, oh, things are starting to get interesting. Usually people check out by episode 3. Sometimes the first episode is a deal breaker. And with, you know, with this episode, yeah, there's a problem that's happening where their main problem in this episode is that they have to get to a planet with resources because their resources, which I think is gas and oil, is running out on the ship, and Eva had to pretty much move power from 100% to 50% because they're not going to make it based off of the fuel, and they have to get to a certain planet to get that resources. And of course, there's another sub problem that happens on that top of that problem, which we'll get into because mostly that's when it gets into the bad. But what the good part of it is we're starting to get into the owner, because last episode we found that Trent was suspicious because the owner of the Ark program and his wife is there, and you're just like, why? You're like, why is this CEO, this owner here of the Ark program, have to be on Arc One? And then it gives like this little backstory where Lane is looking on his tablet and he's like, hey, since I'm keeping this secret, because in the beginning of the episode he was talking to Sharon and they were like having scotch or whatever, and she's like, to not, keeping secrets. And he and this is where I'll kind of like ding it a little bit. The show, what the show does with expressions is so obvious. Because remember when I said Trent was being all obvious of being suspicious, like kind of nodding to the crowd, like, "Hey, I am not good. You should keep an eye on me." They do that with Lane here, where she's having whiskey, and let me see if I could find it for you guys real quick. And remember, this is live, so everything's gonna be. There we go. Let me see if I can find it. She's talking, and he's like, "Why are we having a drink here?" Yeah, you saw how his head was down. His head is down like this, right? And there's a pause. There's a pause of him just being like, "I don't know. Should I tell her the secret?" And that's what happens as far as that. So, like, the obvious expressions is really funny when it comes to that, and that's another bad. I guess another good point I could tell is that the whole Lane and Grant's not Grant, Sharon, I think Garnett, Sharon Garnett is her name. Jesus Christ, I have so many shows. That's another thing. I need to start having notes just so I know every character and I'm not mixing characters and stuff. But Sharon's, starting to get a little friendly with Lane, and it's actually pretty nice seeing them get along because the past like 4 episodes they were just at each other's throat until Sharon pretty much said, "I'm a clone," which watched that episode, which is hilarious. But what he also learns that in the secret department of the ship where the owner is and his wife is there's another secret door where it opens, and they don't really explain it because again, the only thing I could think of is is this DNA? Is this like some stem cell stuff that's in those tubes? but it has everybody's names and like two of them, and then he says, gathering by twos, meaning the Noah Ark and all that stuff. So you don't get an explanation, but I'm like so hooked on wondering why they're there and what is going on. Um, the security Strickland, I think, he's been consistent as far as acting wise. I mean, he does have that monotone voice, but he's so like calm, and he has some good dialogue with the crew here. Uh, I truly that's another thing, but this is where I was surprised because Eva, who's the engineer on the ship, she was kind of giving um oh my god, I forgot his name. Bryce? Yeah, there we go. Bryce. I think this see, all these names are confusing me. It's great. But Bryce was like kind of like flirting around with Ava, which was they were just having like deep discussions. They know each other. We still don't know their history because things are starting to bloom as far as character development. But Bryce and Ava talking in the beginning of the episode, Bryce collapsed after getting out of the cafeteria, and then we find out it's some sickness that's happening on Earth because they're trying to stop climate change or global warming, and they're putting this chemical in the air, which apparently is getting people sick. I don't know where. Have you ever heard the government, making people sick with chemicals and stuff? I don't know. That never happened, right? Anyway, you get that backstory, which is interesting because again, the owner of Ark system, or a rich person, and then climate change that's happening going on. Did the owner do climate change to activate this Ark program? So things are starting to come together as far as if that's the case. But I'm digging that storyline. But what I was talking about Ava and Bryce, there's a part where, and this is where the bad comes in, I guess. They have to do a slingshot maneuver. They have to go around a star, slingshot off of the star perfectly at a certain degree, and then get it and open up the sails to pretty much push the ship in the direction of the planet with the resources. Ava knows about, something wrong with him, finding him out passed out after the cafeteria, then also finding out that he has this disease. She goes onto the transporter because they have to, do the transporter. No, that's not the transporter yet. They had to take the arc and go around that star. And she goes on later because after they do that maneuver, they take a shuttle, and she's like, "I need to go with you because you could pass out," which essentially he did pass out. But the chemistry of them arguing made me laugh, and I know a lot of people are probably gonna be cringy with their talk back and forth, but I kind of like that, having some charisma with some of the crew. Now, other people are cringy, and I do see that, so don't get me wrong, but I thought this was pretty good. Now, I want to give some dings. When I mean things, that means it's negative. The whole science thing where they get all nerdy with Alicia with the whole gravitational pull, and then they're just like blurting out science. It's so cringy in a way where it's like I don't know if they're saying, because they don't do, because I know someone in the comments are gonna be like, well, Bryce and other people have said, speak English. But what's great about other shows is like you get that mumbo jumbo, and then halfway someone goes, "All right, stop speaking the science stuff. Can you tell me in like layman's terms what's going on?" And then they'll explain it like you're a baby, and it's great. We don't get that enough because again, you had those two vials that I don't know if it's about clones or stuff. I'm guessing that because of Sharon, because she's a clone, and maybe the Ark guy is making clones. I don't know, but like when Alicia goes off, and she does get cut off at some point, but it doesn't explain it to the point where I'm like, just like, well, is that even possible? It's just, it's a little weird when it comes to that. Um, Another thing they had to this is where I think the writing is lacking again, is they're starting to recycle things. So last episode, remember when Trent had to do a suicide mission to get to the radiation room and turn off the switch? Well, now they have to deal with another radiation where the sail doesn't work because one of them is not hooking on to where it needs to be hooked, and they're not getting enough speed to the point where they're going to make the planet. Again, that's where the science thing. Well, I'm like, well, then can't they just, I don't know, thrust it at some point? But I guess they retcon it with, we're running out of gas and we can't really use gas to push us forward to where we need to go. So I don't know. But anyway, they had to recycle another moment of Sharon going out there because she's a clone and she can handle more radiation than others. And that does happen. And then she gets like goo on her face that is supposed to be like radiation burns. Yeah, she's right there with all the goo in her face. I don't know if I can get a clear there we go. We get this here. I know that's the cream, but under it is, the radiation burns, and she's gonna be fine. That's what it seems to be. Uh, and one more bad point I want to bring up, and it happens in the beginning of the episode. Why do they have ranks? Like, I'm starting to think because the first problem, when we hear the problem of the episode, it's coming from Ava. She's like, "Well, I had to revert, some power resources to this area," and then you're like, "How much?" So she did the action without telling her captain what's going on. Like it boggles my mind that there other people are doing things without the knowledge of the captain, especially when it's dire needs and we should be rationing some things to a point. And they do this like weird like freak out moment even to the point where the captain is also freaking out. It's so bad. But overall, because I don't want to spend too much on it, I was satisfied with this episode. There's some things I can nitpick. Obviously the graphics of seeing Sharon going out and it looks like a video game. It's the Sci-Fi Channel, but what's kind of getting stronger is the whole character development from pretty much all the people without dollar store Toby Maguire and then the Alicia chick. They're just like side characters to the point where they have to be like the Bill Nyes of the episode to explain the science, and I get that, and maybe we'll get more on that. But we're getting Bryce's story about how he's sick and how he's endangering the the crew with the sickness, which boggles my mind that he would rather put people in danger just so that he could live his life to the fullest in these daredevil moments. So I guess I could ding that as far as kind of stupid writing. But the backstory of the owner, I thought Ava was fine on this. They also do the therapist. I forgot her name, so I'm just gonna call the therapist. He's starting to bring up that the owner's on here, and she's kind of worried about it. And that's something where I'm more interested as far as what's wrong with her and why is she freaking out. But yeah, the character development is starting to bloom, and I'm getting more interested in this story as far as what happened. Oh yeah, that's another thing. At the end of this episode, they roll up on this planet, and Eve was like, oh, that's the other thing. God damn, I'm sorry, guys. They they found the material or the element that attacked their ship on that planet, and they're just like, "Oh, let's go to that planet because it has gas." And then they're like having another discussion, like we shouldn't go there. And then they have the "we need to do this or we're gonna die" speech for the like thousandth time in this show. But at the end of the episode, they take the transporter and they find out that the element's not on the planet. It's another arc behind the planet. So as much as it's stupid, like wouldn't your computers know that it's in the planet and not outside of the planet? But I digress on that. But I'm just like, whoa, there's another arc. What's going on with this? Are we getting more story of the about the bad guys in the show finally? And I'm interested about that. So I will give this a solid 3 out of 5 as far as seeing this episode.